Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 online action. Today we're back with the High Elves, going to be taking on the Empire, so let's go ahead and jump straight to the army compositions. We've got Alariel the Radiant here with Tempest and Earthblood. She's also got her items here. This Stave of Averlorn actually gives her a cheaper Earthblood. Only 4 winds of magic for her Earthblood, so definitely worth taking in that aspect. In terms of the rest of the army, we've got a front line of spearmen, 2 Lothern Sea Guard protecting the Everqueen's court guards. We've got 1 unit of Dragon Princes in sweeper position, the Regiment of Renown Heralds of the Wind, Illyrian Reavers. We've got 2 more units of Dragon Princes hidden in the woods over to the side, and that's pretty much it for my build. Let's zoom over to the Empire here. Their forces are going to be led by Balthazar Gelt himself. Indeed, Balthazar's a pretty solid choice. He's got Searing Doom and Plague of Rust, not too bad. 2 Witch Hunters, the Hammer of Witches, and a Mortar, as well as a bunch of State Troops, Spearmen and Swordsmen, Sigmar's Sons it looks like. He's got 1 unit of Crossbowmen, 2 Demigryph Knights with Halberds on each flank, and 1 on each flank, and 1 Empire Knight on each flank as well. So without further ado, let's get the battle rolling. You can see right off the bat I'm going to be positioning up on this high ground and trying to take a downhill engagement. Downhill doesn't matter as much in this game as it did for previous games, but it definitely does matter, particularly with high mass units charging like heavy cavalry and so on. Excuse me. And another advantage I have here is that Balthazar Gelt has come in the air. And of course Alariel has Tempest, so I should be able to catch out Balthazar with that Tempest and take him down that way without having to dedicate too many other resources to do so. You can see doing a little bit of a skirmish phase here. These Illyrian Reavers probably going to get caught up by these Empire Knights a little bit, which is pretty inefficient from my perspective. A little bit of a miss micro there, but we are going to pull them away in just a moment. You can see again I'm positioning up on this high ground area here, trying to take a commanding position in terms of the terrain. My opponent's using his artillery to shoot uphill, and I'm just not offering any high value targets. You can see the spearmen are in range, but a lot of these other units are not in range of those 2 artillery pieces, and that is by design. Nice connection there with the cannon taking out a few of those Illyrian Reavers. You can see the Demigryph Knights also on station, so we're going to try and perhaps get some spear support. I've also got these Dragon Princes on station as well, so a bit of give and take there. You can see Balthazar is going to come forward and tempt my missile line. I'm going to move them forward just slightly, but that is going to bring them into range of some of this artillery here. In particular, I don't want the mortar hitting the Everqueen's court guards. That could potentially be really bad, so we're going to pull back out of range. You can see over on this side my opponent's advancing with his cavalry, but since my cavalry is hidden in the woods, we're definitely in an advantageous situation there. First Tempest going down. It's an overcast Tempest on Balthazar Gelt, so you can see him caught up in the storm here. He's not too happy about the situation, certainly. But yeah, so far so good. My opponent doesn't actually get a charge order off here, so we're going to get the advantage, the initiative advantage here with the Dragon Princes charging in to these Demigryph Knights. Demigryph Knights with Halberds will beat Dragon Princes if they both get a clean charge, but with the Dragon Princes getting a good charge and the Demigryph Knights not having a charge order at all, it's going to definitely swing in favor of the Dragon Princes. Not to mention I've got Alariel's healing on station as well. These Empire Knights are just going to get crushed by Dragon Princes, absolutely crushed. Meanwhile, over on this far side, you can see my opponent has pulled back a little bit. We're just keeping these Heralds of the Wind, even though they don't do armor-piercing missile damage, they're going to be good at just kind of poking away and harassing. You can see my opponent's state troops now moving forward here. Balthazar is actually getting tangled up in Alariel in the air here. I figured since Alariel has better combat stats than Balthazar, she can actually duel him up in the air pretty effectively. Not to mention I've got self-healing and more, so Balthazar definitely not too happy with this situation, just getting beat up by Alariel here in the air. But yeah, this is going to start to swing the balance power pretty decisively and is a pretty serious mistake by my opponent. I definitely recommend against bringing any Flying Lord against the High Elves, just because Alariel is such a strong pick. You'll very often see her, and of course she can take Tempest. So a nice Searing Doom there. I actually was surprised how much damage that did to armored units. I might have to start playing with that Searing Doom a bit more against armored units, but did some good damage to those Dragon Princes. Unfortunately not going to be enough to save those Demigryph Knights. You can see in the mainline engagement here, Dragon Princes supporting with a nice rear charge, and I'm going to pull back away. The Everqueen's Court Guards and the Lothran Sea Guard are just hosing down these Witch Hunters here. Definitely a rough situation for my opponent. Meanwhile, we've got some Dragon Princes just about to come through the back line here. As soon as I pull these Dragon Princes away from their rear charge, we're going to push into the back line of the Empire here. You can see a little bit of miss micro from Malariel. We're going to take a ton of damage from the accusations and various things there. But yeah, she is going to pull back as soon as I notice that she starts taking that damage. But yeah, now you can see the Dragon Princes pushing through over on this side. These Dragon Princes have just been tailing the Demigryph Knights and Empire Knights that came in, and the Demigryph Knights tried to get involved in the infantry fight, but there's really not a good place for them. They should have stayed focused on the Dragon Princes, certainly. But yeah, it's going to be a rough overall for the Empire at this point to try and come back. Balthazar Gelt's very low, unleashing an Overcast. Searing Doom there, actually doing a lot of damage to those Everqueen's Court Guards, so I like that quite a bit. However, he is in range for another Tempest, and this should be enough to finish him off, or at the very least finish off his leadership. So yeah, poor Balthazar caught up in the storm here, sadly regretting coming on his fancy Pegasus there. So yeah, it is probably not quite enough to finish him off, but certainly his leadership is done. You can see the Dragon Princes marauding around the back line here, shutting down the Empire powder units, so definitely in for a tough time. For my opponent's build, I like a lot of his units here. It's just that he didn't really get the engagements to play out the way he needed to. Getting that cavalry force caught on the back hoof over on this side was pretty backbreaking, and having Balthazar up in the air ended up being quite the liability. If my opponent had even brought Balthazar on a horse and maybe just fine-tuned his build in a few other ways, it may have turned out a bit differently for him. But I definitely think that there's some elements of my opponent's build that are pretty solid. Some other elements I would probably cut. But yeah, overall, super fun game. Hope you guys enjoyed watching. Let's take a look at the army breakdown here. In terms of my army, you can see the Dragon Prince is doing quite well, picking up XP chevrons almost across the board. Of course, Alariel did take quite a bit of damage, but outdueling Balthazar there up in the air was definitely a key. Like I said, you take Balthazar on the ground on a horse, and he's much safer. Just in terms of fine-tuning my opponent's build in general, I think his infantry core was pretty decent. You know, the Balthazar double Witch Hunter thing is not too bad. So let's go ahead and jump quickly into the custom battle screen, and we can talk about a couple things here. So I would definitely say you want to take Balthazar Gelt on a warhorse so that he's on the ground rather than being up in the air. Definitely agree with the spell selection, so we'll stick with that, and the Staff of Olens. You can see Balthazar very cheap in this, guys. I'm going to grab one Witch Hunter, but then I'm also going to grab a Warrior Priest. We're going to stick him on a warhorse, and we're going to forego Benediction, Divine Power. We will keep Hammer of Sigmar as the sole buff. You definitely don't want to bring the Banner of Eternal Flame in this matchup. But the idea here is we're going to use him to support the Royal Althorp Gryphites here, and to give that melee attack buff. Let's see, it's 26, I believe. Yep, 26 melee attack. So he's going to stick with the Royal Althorp Gryphites and kind of run with them as a mobile squad. Then my opponent definitely agree with a lot of his infantry picks. You know, he has Sigmar's Sons, Spearmen with Shields. The Hammer of Witches, pretty solid pick in this matchup as well, although I find Empire Cannons to be a little bit underwhelming. But what I would do in hindsight is to go a little bit more elite on the heavy cavalry. I mean, obviously we've got the Royal Althorp Gryphites. We could probably grab one more Demigryph Knight and then maybe a couple of Reiksguard here. If we change some costs, we can get maybe one more Empire Knight. I would just say you can forego the Crossbowmen and try and go with a little bit more of an aggressive strategy. Personally, I'd probably cut these Demigryph Knights as well. Just go with very heavy Reiksguard. Reiksguard will trade okay against Dragon Princes. It's not great, but at the very least, they're going to allow you to contest that mobility game a little bit more heavily. Granted, my opponent did have the Demigryph Knights that, again, got caught out, and that was the biggest issue there. To that effect, you may want to grab some scouting units, something like Pistoliers, or, you know, another relatively cheap fast attack unit. I guess Pistoliers are really your best option there. Outriders are going to be a little bit expensive for that, although if you do need mobile armor-piercing missiles, Outriders are certainly a good option. They can be very effective in helping win that cav game. So there's just some food for thought. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below, though. How would you have gone about countering that high elf heavy cav build? I appreciate all your input. I also appreciate you guys watching. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button so every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. I'm going to be keeping it coming with more Total War Warhammer 2 online content. My map series, unfortunately, wasn't quite as well received as I would have hoped, so I don't know that I'm going to continue that, but at the very least, whenever I fight a battle, or showcase a battle, rather, I'll try and point out the map and specific features of the map, to try and kind of educate you guys in that way, since the map series itself didn't seem to generate that much by the way of interest, which is unfortunate, but hey, I still enjoy making the content, so there's that. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.